up, everybody? Welcome to the IAG Thursday thing. This thing we do every Thursday, even when it's right after massive holidays. And we all hang out, talk about Subaru stuff, answer questions, have a good time, and generally just, chill and maybe accidentally learn stuff. It's a good time. Today, I'm joined by my usual partner in crime, which is awesome. Warranty, how you doing?
Dewey, I'm doing great. I was rudely awakened on Christmas morning, and it was not by Santa. It was by my battery backup for my gaming PC deciding to go end of life. The battery's 5 years old, and it said at 6 in the morning, "Hey, I'm worn out. You need to wake up," and silence the alarm. No presents, just annoyance.
Oh, that's fun. And then I'm also joined, who I thought was going to be my co-host today, and now he's well, I guess he's still my co-host, but he's the other half of what we're going to be doing today. Graham at Boosted Performance. What's up, Graham?
Oh, not a whole lot, man. Just trying to survive the holidays.
Yep. How was your Christmas?
It was pretty good. It was low key, but it was good.
There's nothing wrong with low key, dude.
Nope.
I got to be real. It's been a little chaos here. I had like 30 people in my house yesterday. It was insanity.
That's a lot of people.
It's too many people. Like, my social battery was crushed.
I bet.
So you do what you can do with what you got, but it was rough. And then also joining us on the podcast is executive producer Jordan. Jordan, what's up, buddy?
Not much. Just winding down from Christmas, like you. Social battery drained. Way too many people.
Yep.
Way too much traveling. We had like 4 houses to go to.
Oh my gosh,
dude! I used to do it. It's not worth it, man.
It's not.
I will go to one house. That's it. I will leave my house once, and that is all you get on Christmas. We used to do like 4 or 5, depending on what it was, because I had like a split family, and it was crazy. Not worth it. Never do it again.
Yeah, it's not worth the hassle. It's actually more anxiety than actually like peaceful with your family, because then you're trying to fit everybody in. People want to see me, they can come to my house.
If you think about it, I'm gonna just make a guess here. I'm gonna venture a guess. Your favorite one was your house in the morning, and then the very last.
Yes, exactly.
Everything in between, you're constantly looking at the clock and rushing, and it's hard to even have like good conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep, that's the worst. And then also in the chat, but always takes care of our thumbnails and technical issues, and he's helping us out a lot, is Randy. Randy's in the chat. Thank you, Randy. But today, honestly, we were thinking about doing another show, and then we decided not to because we're all having holiday hangover. And I was like, man, we haven't done just kind of an open forum Ask Dewey thing in a while. And Graham was already kind of chilling. He's like, I already got it planned to be on the show. I'm like, why don't we make it an Ask Dewey or Ask Graham? And we also got Warranty in here too, who's probably going to give his 2 cents on everything. And who knows? Maybe executive producer Jordan can cough something up. But it's kind of an open forum. We've done these before. They've been pretty good. We get a lot of really interesting questions. How we do this is I put a thread in the IAG Insider Subaru Lounge Facebook group, and we get a few questions in there. And then we also just pull it from our chat on Discord that we're reading live. And this is all recorded in Discord, and then we pop it up to Spotify or wherever else it goes. And that's how you can ask these. So you can join us every week. We always have a live chat going. Every week we always have a live chat going in our Discord. So while we're recording this, you can always comment and type and add whatever you want to add. And it makes it a lot of fun. So feel free to, join us whenever you can. If you guys are new, that's how this works. It's a lot of fun. It's a community thing. But today, like I said, we're going to start with the IAG Insider Subaru Lounge. Some of these people can't make the trip, or join us live, so they tend to post some stuff up. We posted this up around noon. I probably should have posted this thread earlier. I'm gonna give Graham the benefit of the doubt on that one. He wins for that one, but the actual link itself, I posted at the exact right time because I am a genius. Sorry, Graham. All right. I think we're just going to start from the top. We actually got a pretty solid question right out of the gate. Mr. Josh Aldrich, who is also in the chat. The Aldrich family sent me a pretty sweet Christmas gift too. But
Very nice.
yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec. But what he asks, and I'm just going to read this verbatim. I'd like to know how Graham is doing on all of the fancy Mtron E-gate anti-surge and compressor mapping with all the pressure and temp sensors. Also would like to know when Boogie is going to start playing with it. PWR should be shipping my intercooler core today or tomorrow, which will speed up the progress of mine going towards a working car. So he's building a pretty rowdy, what was going to be a street mod car, but I think he cut enough off to where he's track mod at a minimum at this point. Because he lost his brain.
Track mod needs a better class of criminals, so we're here
They
for
really
it.
do, even though he lost his damn mind. Stephanie let him grab a sawzall, and now half his damn car's missing. So,
and then I took it to another shop for them to cut off even more.
Yeah,
because race car.
Because race car.
But Graham, have you got to mess with too much of that? I think mine and yours were the test beds for you, weren't they?
Yeah, so I haven't gotten through all that stuff yet. Here in Iowa, it's winter, so it's very cold, and my car doesn't have a thermostat on the oil cooler setup, so it's very difficult to get out and get enough heat in it to really test these things. That's been kind of my challenge until I get the new engine dropped in and have a thermostat. But I did get out and start playing with the E-gate because it's all hooked up, and I wanted to start tuning it in, and it's been really good. It's been very positive. The boost is very, very, very smooth compared to a regular pneumatic gate. So I'm still kind of playing around with some of the strategies, but it's certainly really nice. I am using the new Turbo Smart electronic blow-off valve, and I'm not doing anything with anti-surge yet, but it is installed. And I chose on my car to put it on the hot side, meaning it's very close to the turbo. The reason why I did that was, because a lot of turbos these days have basically their bypass valve is attached right on the turbo.
Yeah.
And it lets it bleed off a lot quicker. And from my perspective of trying to do anti-surge, I felt like that was going to be a better spot. So I put that new valve there. And initially, I actually hooked it up wrong. I hooked it up like you normally would by connecting it to the intake manifold. And it wasn't acting correct. And I looked into it and I realized that this particular bypass valve is meant to have a pressure source only. So I hooked it right to the turbo, and now it behaves really well, even without doing any anti-surge tuning.
Let's talk about that then, because that's why ours was acting a complete fool.
Yeah, you had yours hooked up all wrong, and
we didn't know. Like, yeah, we had nothing to go from.
Unfortunately, we rushed through a lot of things.
Yeah.
We had to, and it was working, but it wasn't working. It wasn't connected well. So now I've got it connected correctly on my car, and between the E-gate, between that bypass valve, even not using the anti-surge yet, because I can't. Honestly, that's going to be really hard to test on the street. It's going to be one of those things where that's going to be like a track thing where you're going to have to be at very high RPM, very high boost, and like lifting for high speed corners to really test it. I can probably test it on the dyno once I get my engine swapped in and I'm on the dyno playing with it, but that's going to be a trackside thing. But just driving around with the E-gate, that valve, and then the TMF, the throttle math flow, airflow calculation like you have now, I cannot believe how responsive and crisp my car drives. Like, you can jack the throttle around as much as you want at any RPM, and the response and the reintroduction and reduction of torque is very, very, very smooth.
That's going to be helpful. It's already good. It was a massive improvement in Boogie from what it was. I can't imagine once we really start screwing with some stuff.
Getting the E-gate done, getting all that compressor mapping done, and using the anti-surge for high speed lift, it's going to be awesome. So I don't have it all fully done and tested yet, but definitely making good progress. So we should be able to utilize it all this year on both our cars is obviously the goal.
While my brain's spinning here right now, let's talk about this. So originally, Turbo Smart came on board and they want us to test all sorts of shit. I think you're doing a very good job of testing this blow off valve concept and where you're putting it to see if you can use that as what would you even call it?
Like I said, it is kind of anti-surge because it has an electronic solenoid in the top of it. So what you can do is you can actuate that solenoid, and you can allow it to open even when you're on throttle, or still somewhat on throttle.
Either way, they sent me this giant boost gate. This is designed for guys that are making like 6,000 horsepower and shit. Like the plate, because it's like a small throttle body, is giant. And honestly, physically, we have nowhere to put it. And if the second you even crack that like 2%, it's going to, all the boost is going away. Okay. So TurboSmart since then has made significantly smaller ones, and they're going to trade me. Okay. Which we all agreed when we were there. They're like, yeah, why don't we do that? So I'm going to send the giant one back, and they're going to give us a small one.
What size is the new one? Is it like 30 or 32 or?
Yeah, it's teeny. Yeah, I don't exactly remember what the sizing was, but yeah, it's very small, because the other one was
work better.
70 mil. Like, it was just huge.
Yeah.
Okay. So should we put that over by the turbo? Because it would be, for us, packaging wise, it would probably help a ton. There's really nowhere for us to put this damn gate anywhere else. Now, ideas we've thought about and what we've seen in like World Time Attack cars and stuff is they stick them either on the end tank or really close to the other side of the intercooler on the cold side. Yeah, but would it make sense for us to stick it over there instead?
Hot side of the end tank on the intercooler is what I've seen recommended.
Okay, but what if we put it again? What if we put it on the, because that's going to be a pain in the ass.
I think honestly, you can put it anywhere. It's just what's the most ideal, and it's hard to say. Is there going to be that much of a difference? I don't know.
Well, what I'm thinking is the way we run the intercooler piping, it would actually be super simple for us to implement that on the hot side piping after the turbo, before the intercooler, somewhere in that range. Now,
that'd be fine too.
I think Dylan's going to chime in, and Dylan's saying end tank. The only reason I kind of don't want to do the end tank is it's going to be hard to show the product off. But that really, honestly, I want it to work. You know what I mean? But I'm just thinking from TurboSmart, I'm working with them, and I want to be able to show this stuff. Then again, if we have we're on the dyno or whatever, we can have the front off. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, no, you can certainly do it right on the hot side charge pipe. That's essentially where mine is, utilized at the moment. So
yeah, we could probably go either way, and I think Dylan's already, I think his brain's running. We'll get it figured out. Plus, if we have some cool pictures of it and how it works, I think that would work. Dylan, I think that's going to be the play. We got to get the old one sent back, but they're trading us out with a smaller one. I think we might go straight to that, since unless you really get this this blow off valve concept working, but I think
we should do it. I think the blow off valve is going to be a good stopgap, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as precise as the actual anti-surge valve. That's an actual like throttle body style. I'm just testing this as like this might be a more budget friendly solution for people. So
yeah. Now, how about using a electronic blow off valve on, let's say it's a maybe a smaller turbo or a stock location setup, and you were to stick that electronic blow off valve on, say, like a top mount. Do you think you might be able to get that to work fairly well? Is that something worth trying to chase? Let's say we're to do that on my 05 STI.
Might be. It might not really be worth it, just because you don't really run into that surge issue so much on smaller turbos.
Yep.
Typically, this is that what we're really trying to solve is a small engine, large turbo, high RPM issue.
Yep. Okay. No, just figure if we're going to discuss this, let's discuss this.
Yeah.
I'm still noodling on putting it on the hot side versus on the cold side. Cold side is going to have lower temperatures, so more air density, but hot side is just straight from the turbo what it's actually making, and what you're trying to control is the turbo. So I could see an argument made for both sides.
Yep. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's an argument made for both sides for sure. I the either way, the smaller gate's going to help us. We could put it on either way. The smaller gate's going to allow us to put that pretty much wherever we want. Seraph and Wolf, we'll get to you. You know what? We're actually going to just wrap that up into this, so I'll make sure. How high do you have to go in standalone wise for an E-gate control? It's that's debatable.
Well, here's the deal. I can answer that real quick.
Yeah, do it.
Not high at all, because if you use the Turbo Smart black box to control the gate, the Turbo Smart black box can work over CAN bus like it does with Mtron, which is of course very slick, but it can also just take a simple PWM input, meaning you can basically treat it like it's a boost controller and give it a duty, and that gets translated to gate area.
So I have, again, I'm not trying to, I don't know how that would work with a link, but I heard there are some standalones, popular standalones, maybe that start with an H, that don't play well with that.
You're trying to control it directly. So an E gate, the gate itself is basically, think of it like
I heard it was a problem with the black box also.
What's that?
I heard there was an issue with the black box also.
Oh, I mean, that maybe if they're trying to do CAN bus, but the black box can take PWM input basically, and that's essentially how you control a regular boost controller. So instead of running 2 wires to a 3-port boost controller, you can run those same 2 wires essentially to the black box and give it a duty and let it do its thing.
Nice.
And then you program it with a computer. Now you miss out, you wouldn't get the feedback, you wouldn't get gate position, you wouldn't get gate temperature, you wouldn't get any of the warnings or the safety. So it's certainly like doing it with Mtron with a full CAN communication in and out. That is the best way to do it. But other ECUs could implement CAN control if they wanted to. The CAN, the black box CAN is published in public. It's not secretive like Heltec likes to do with some of their shit. So it's open for anybody to use. If you have a programmable CAN bus, you could do it and set it up. But right now, out of the box, it's almost pretty much plug and play for setup with Mtron, because Mtron actually helped develop the black box. But the black box is also designed where you could theoretically run an E-gate with a stock ECU if you wanted to try that.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, interesting.
All right, we've got one more that I think is going to kind of fold into this, so I figured we just do it right now. Flanny Man, who unfortunately had to leave.
Dewey,
what?
Dewey, let me touch on one more thing.
By all means.
Sarah, so here's the challenge. One of the reasons why it's challenging to control this. So Seraph and Wolf, he mentions, if you've got dual throttle body, yes, you can connect the gate, and basically the gate is like a throttle body. The trouble is, because it has to be so strong and so fast, it pulls really high amps when it's maxed out. Like when it's reaching the end and it's pushing, or if it's preloading, it reaches really high amperage outputs. And a lot of ECUs, the outputs, even for drive-by-wire, don't support that much amperage without overheating and tripping and causing problems. So it's not a limitation of, if every ECU that can do drive-by-wire can open and close an E-gate. The problem is E-gates require a lot of power. So it's better to have the black box that takes in, like, it basically uses double power inputs and double ground inputs to handle the high amperage on the pins. You risk melting pins. You risk hurting your ECU trying to control an E-gate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a lot of,
yep.
Like, you really don't want that on your ECU.
So the black box costs extra money, but it solves that problem, and it isolates the ECU from having to worry about supplying enough power and not getting too hot. So, and like I said, if you're using CAN bus, you have all of the details of what's going on with the gate from the black box. It's the way to do an E-gate. If you're going to spend the money on an E-gate, using the black box is the right way to do it, period, in my opinion.
Octo just asked what seems like a fairly the question makes a lot of sense. Would it require a higher amperage alternator to support it?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't draw that kind of crazy amperage. It's not like, it's not anything like that. It's just a lot for an ECU to pull through. It's like, it'd be like trying to power a really big fuel pump directly from an ECU output. You wouldn't want to do that because high flow fuel pumps pull a lot of amps.
Yep.
But this is
So
also
it's kinda
solved
like
by
that.
the power distribution units, right?
Yeah, that's where the PMU, like, either, you can just run fused power to the black box, or in my case, we got the ECU master PMU. I've got a PMU pin dedicated to the black box, so I can monitor the amperage and, have circuitry safeties and yada, yada, yada.
Got it.
All right, man. See, we're already off and running. This was
Going
great.
deep.
Who's not having a good time here? My brain's already churning thinking about where we're gonna put this damn little gate and stuff. So I'm having a good time. I
Got
guarantee.
another
What's up?
got another deep question in here. It's from Flanny Man, but he already left. Question for Graham: have you or any tuners you know ever tuned a rocket anti-lag system? And is Mtron capable of it?
I haven't messed with it. I've certainly looked into the concept of it and know how it works.
I only personally know
Mtron
one person who
Mtron could do it, yes.
The only person I know who has tuned one of those is that I know personally is Robert Thorne.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
think I
Interesting.
don't think he's kept in there very long, 'cause I think it destroyed things quickly.
Oh, he was breaking shit all the time, but he's like, it was amazing when it did work. It just
Yeah.
didn't work all the time. Like
Yeah.
it was a science experiment, but it was incredible when it did work. I could see that just being wild if were ever to set something like that up. But I think kind of as long whatever your imagination is, you can pretty much pull off with almost any standalone to a degree, but like especially with like an Mtron or a Motec or something like that. If you can imagine it, you could probably find a way to pull it off. So,
Next
okay.
question.
Yeah, let's head over back to the Facebook group. Let me
Okay.
pull it
Top
up.
of my list on here is who has the fastest 2.1 liter stroker GC8 in the US? Now, before you answer that, that is a micro record to end all micro records.
Yeah, especially in the US. So, for any of you folks out there, because I think Ross is not from the US. Um, yeah, Ross is a UK guy. Okay, he's a time attacker in the UK. Ross Hampton, fast dude in the UK. Okay, so not only that, he's saying fastest, and when you say that here in the US, a lot of times people think drag racing. Okay, so
Right, mile
everybody.
an hour. Not even
But
not even elapsed time.
the other thing, people are eh, tend to fail to realize when they're not in the US is we didn't get turbo GCs here. We did not get turbo Imprezas until 2001 in the 2002 model year. Okay, so we didn't get the WRX until then. So everybody has, if you have a turbo GC here in the States, it was built within the aftermarket or however, it was a swap job or it was built in the aftermarket. So we didn't get those. So that record, just like warranty said, that is a micro record. And then you talk about 2-1 strokers, which were kind of a hot thing. So what a 2-1 stroker is you take a 2 liter and put a 2.5 liter crank in it. And they were a hot thing in like the 2010 or let's call it the aughts. They were a hot thing in the aughts because it was a fairly straightforward way to add a little bit of torque, but they were a massive thing everywhere else in the world. Um, the downside to that, I actually am a believer in the 2-1 stroker, and I'm sure there's going to be others out there who are going to gasp when I say this, but I think you are getting the worst part of both engines. You're getting the small bore of the 2 liter and you're getting the crap rod ratio of a 2.5, and you're putting them together to make an engine that you really shouldn't be revving past 7,500 RPM if you want it to last any amount of time. So you take away the rev ability of a 2 liter and its lovely rod ratio, and you gain hardly no displacement for it. Don't get me wrong, you're going to gain a little bit of mid-range, and if it was your only option and you were trying to make like a better daily driver engine, there's an argument to be made. But the reality is, it's not your only option anymore. If your option here in the States, and even where you guys are at, if you have the option to maybe open the combustion chamber up and throw a 2.5 liter in, even if it was a basic build 2.5 liter or like one of our IAG 750s or something like that, a pretty basic rod piston setup or a basic closed deck setup, and open the combustion chamber up, you're going to end up with a better daily driver engine. Keep it under 7,000 RPM and take care of it. It's going to be a great engine for you. You're going to gain way more mid-range from that than you would from a 2.1, and it's going to be a fantastically reliable setup if you do it correctly.
Bears repeating, since the rest of the world got 2 liters and we really did not get 2 liters. The 2.5 in stock format is weaker, but when you build it, such as with a closed deck, it is no longer weaker. So it sounds like he's going backwards, but it's really not.
Having these turbo 2 liters and good versions of the turbo 2 liter all over the world way before we were. A huge amount of our aftermarket is based on that. The groundwork that those early 2 liter guys did, and those engines were way stronger than what we got here. So they have this mindset that when they got the 2.5 liter, they played around with it a little bit, blew it up really fast. They're like, these things are junk, we don't want to touch them. The reality of it is the aftermarket has fixed pretty much all of the issues with the 2.5 liter in different various ways. So that's an argument for a different time, but I don't know who has the fastest 2.1 stroker, because honestly, I don't think anybody's really went out of their way to try to figure out who does here in the States.
I can't think of a single person who has it, let alone a fast one.
Ross is a time attack guy who has the fastest, you're going to be talking swap GC8 in the States. Currently running, it would be me. Before then, it would be GST over on the West Coast. GST's was nuts. I don't remember what he called that car, but that car was insane. And definitely faster than Boogie. But again, currently operating, it would be me. But that would just be fastest GC in general. There's not enough nobody runs 2.1 strokers here anymore. And they definitely don't run them on track, or if they do, they're not making a big splash. So sorry, man.
Yep. Next question. This is a personal one, clearly, from our very own Tim Herr. Why does my engine in the GC have so much blow by?
Do you want to answer that, Graham? Because I can. Okay, I guess I'll answer it. Graham has exited the building.
No, I'm here. Sorry, I was on mute. Probably because it was built for 600 horsepower and it's seen 45 pounds of boost for its entire life.
Yeah, she's beat.
Tim Herr is a drag racer, and for a long time, maybe still now, he has the 2 liter record for US.
I mean, he bought that engine used from Mikey, who beat the hell out of it at 600 horsepower, and then it's been up to 800 horsepower in Tim's car and been through some shit. And I think it finally needs bearings now. He got his money's worth.
Did he take his old engine and throw it into his GC? What's in his GC right now?
I think so. I think he took it out of the spool bus. I mean,
no. I thought he put together just a piston rod 2.5 for the GC.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're right.
GC's got so much damn blow-bys because he built it with leftovers. I mean, what? You should be happy it runs, Tim.
Oh yeah, I was totally thinking about the spool bus engine. I wasn't even thinking about. Yeah,
that's by now. I think that's rod knocking, but that engine owes him nothing.
No,
absolutely. As far as the engine, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, Tim, who built it? Was it you?
Yeah, he built it with iMath.
Maybe he should have had Mikey build it and then ash on it. Do you remember that from back in the day?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I used to watch Mikey build engines, and he would always ash on them with a cigarette for good luck, and they'd stay together forever.
But it worked.
But if it works, okay.
Yeah.
What else we got? Let's see. Next question. If I'm racing with a veteran organization, would it be lame and cliche for my safety suit to be my OG tanker Nomex? And if it was, would you slap my ass?
I'll slap your ass either way. I'm equal opportunity ass slapper out here. But I think it's not technically legal with a racing organization. If you were to take it out there and that's not SFI rated, they're gonna be like, hey, you can't run this. But if you're just wearing that to go do laps, it's safer than not, and I think it'd be cool. I'd run them. I don't know.
Call it lame? Certainly not.
I think it's lame.
Not cliche at all.
I think it's cool, especially if you're with a vet organization. I think that's cool. I think that's the sort of stuff you should be doing. So I think it's cool. I'll give you a pass.
So those are all the questions in the thread. Now, is there another thread I should be looking at?
Nope. I think that's it. We're in the chat now.
Yeah.
Yep. I think we need to. I'm just gonna say it now. I need to start pumping in the IAG Insider Subaru Lounge. I don't think we use it enough. And or we need to start blowing the Discord up, and maybe we just make the chat in the Discord. I actually thought about that when I was doing it, and I think maybe we need to make a ask the show section in our Discord, and I think we need to do that. I bet you executive producer Jordan and I can come up with something. So basically, it's just a spot for you
there right now.
Some podcasts have an email address or a text message address where you can either call them and leave a message or send a text message.
Yeah, but we can just do it. We can do it in the Discord. Well, if that doesn't work, maybe we'll do that. We'll come up
I got
with
another one. It's
I
not
might as well just
Subaru.
leave it here.
So, I don't know. What do we got?
Dewey, did you build that PC and did the GPU fit? From our very own Jake Martin.
Yeah, sweet. So yeah, I did build it, and Megan got it yesterday, and she loves it. So I built her a smaller ITX build. Like I've never done an ITX build before for a Christmas present, because all she was using was this Microsoft Surface, and she was using it for all of her craft work and stuff. And anytime she was doing like Photoshop and things like that, it just did not have the horsepower to do what she needed to do. So I'm like, let me build you a PC. And then I I built the most bastardized PC ever. It's got a AMD processor, but it's running on an Intel GPU.
The new one.
Yeah, which is great. And honestly, it runs flawlessly. It's fantastic. She was madly in love with it. And yeah, it fit barely, but it did fit. And yeah, the build's really cool. I'll try to take some pictures and post it up.
It's been a long time since we all went to Micro Center, but that was a really nice time.
We had a really good time, other than Graham being like, fourth meal or whatever the fuck.
I couldn't hear you because you were dropping out, but I know what you said, which is we all wanted to hang out there for hours.
Yeah, and then Graham just
listen,
eat meal.
I was having a good time. I was playing that flight simulator and successfully landing commercial airliners on my first try.
Yeah,
you should have stayed in a few more minutes while I got to run around. I don't get to go to Micro Center ever.
It was fine.
Your face is fine. No,
I was getting a little hangry, but other than that, I was doing fine.
And there was no reason for you to be hangry because we just ate.
Yeah, but I wasn't. I was. Meh.
All right, I got another question. Hey guys, could a Link ECU take an ABS speed sensor signal to run my dash speedometer on my GC8 version 5 STI, or would I still need to run a VSS signal converter?
Nope. The answer to that is yes. So it's very common. Pretty much any standalone ECU does have digital speed inputs that could be hooked to an ABS sensor directly, as long as you'd have to know how to interpret that signal, mainly in the sense of like what's the count of things it's watching, like how many ticks go by to make one revolution. And then you also have to plug in the diameter of the wheel, or the overall tire. But if you have that information, then you can get speed into the ECU from that, and then your TAC output from the ECU can work from there. So yes, basically you wouldn't need to have a separate VSS converter. That's what that would be doing. A Link ECU or any ECU can do that for you with the right settings programmed in.
Cool.
So
Nice.
it the BMW MK60 that we just put in Boogie, that also has some version of a CAN output that we're trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else we're hoping to mess with too. We're and I pray we can get this to work, but I really would like to be able to log the pressure sensors.
It'd
I
be
think
nice
that
to have that.
oh my
Yeah.
god, that
Four
would be
channel.
so good. Yeah, so we could log the pressure sensors to be able to see if I'm, A, pressing the brakes enough and how I go onto the brakes and come off the brakes. And I think that's going to become a way bigger deal with the way some of the rule changes are going. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that here in a few too.
Next question. I'm thinking about getting an Audi RS3 as a dual duty street/occasional track vehicle. I think Graham has some experience with the platform. Just wondering what his thoughts were.
I
Yeah. So it's an incredible car. Kim and I really enjoyed having it. We actually are considering selling it. We have a guy who really wants to buy it, so might be moving on from it. But it's been an extremely fun car. It's very powerful, and even for its weight and its size, it's very nimble on the track. It can be a little bit front biased. It's one of those types of, it's a transverse mounted engine, with a basically a Haldex differential that sends the power to the back. So it's, in other words, it's front wheel drive first, but then it feeds power to the rear. But it does a really good job of balancing it and biasing it. We did get it set up with some sway bars, we did put some track pads on it, and I did run it at Gridlife a bit. Not last year, but in 23, I didn't have anything to run, and I was pretty impressed with it. It's fast and it handles pretty good for its size. But it's just, in order to be competitive, you'd have to really gut a lot of weight out of it, I think, and maybe push the engine a little bit more towards its safe limits, in stock form, in order to try to compete with the street GT cars, because that's where it fits. So I guess my answer is, it's a really fun, it's a wonderful daily driver, and it's very fun on track, but it's not a very competitive platform without sinking a lot of money into an already expensive and very nice car.
That's pretty close to where I was going to go with that. One thing I want to make sure you touched on it a bit. That still has an open front and rear diff. I'm not saying that the car doesn't rotate really well, and
Yep.
Audi's like e-diff logic isn't bad. But it leaves a bit to be desired when it comes to that department.
Yep.
It's an incredible street car that if you were to occasionally take it to a track day, you would probably have a pretty good time with it.
Yep.
If
So for that,
What's up?
it's great. So for occasional track use, yeah, definitely, it's got big brakes on it. It's got really big brakes on it. You put some good pads in it and fluid, you're golden there. But yeah, the limitations I ran into trying to push it was the differentials. We were definitely looking at putting in. You can get differentials for it if you want to. They're kind of expensive, and you got to swap them in, but it can be done. And then oil temps get a little bit toasty. There's no factory oil cooler, so I'd actually bought one for it, but never put it on there. So, but for light track use and a street car, it's actually very, very fun.
And while we're on the topic, if you're not familiar with the platform and you disconnect the drive shaft, be very careful. It is a two-piece drive shaft, and if you separate the two pieces far enough, you cannot put them back together, and it's an expensive replacement.
Yep.
So watch YouTube.
Yep.
It's expensive.
And you have to pull the downpipe. You have to do that to do downpipe on it. So, yep. Learn that lesson the hard way.
So I've got a question from me, and
Okay.
you guys might have already answered this, but I want to ask it again. What do you think of the new Gridlife GL GT series?
I've been we've been talking about this a little bit on my other podcast, and I've been asked about this a lot. And I actually kind of knew this was coming. Chris, the owner of Gridlife, had a conversation with me at Pit Race about it. And basically what it boiled down to, he's like, would you ever wheel-to-wheel boogie? And I said, at 600 plus horsepower, there's no way it's just an accident waiting to happen. Not only that, I couldn't make a 15-minute session with that thing that rowdy. But then when they released the rules, and he talked about kind of the power level would be, boogie would get knocked down to like a low 300 horsepower area. Boogie at low 300 horsepower would actually be a tank. It would do really well. and they'd allow me a bunch more tire and all sorts of stuff. I think that class is going to be really cool until the money happens. And the problem with that class is that when you add horsepower, you're going to add money. You're going to add complexity. I think the Corvettes are going to show up because those cars are so good. Like their bones are really good right out of the gate. But what's really going to happen, and I think what they're going for with that class, is there's IMSA guys, the dentist money. Those dudes are getting sick of pouring money into IMSA and really not having that great of a time. And they're looking at us Gridlife guys going, those dudes look like they're having a frickin' riot and they're spending a quarter of what I'm spending.
Yeah.
I want to go do that. So if they were to look at their budget and say, I'm going to pay my race team, to take my GT4 car over there, we're going to, tweak whatever we have to tweak to get it in. And I'm going to spend half of what I spend at IMSA, which is twice what everybody else is spending in Gridlife. I'm going to go win a championship. And they're probably right. I have a feeling it's going to be awesome for like 2 years. And then I think the money's going to come rolling in. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying what's going to happen is the paddock is going to change a little bit as far as some of the stuff we're seeing there. Personally, I think it's going to be awesome for not only GLTC, but Time Attack, because it's when you start bringing money in like that, you're going to start bringing in different eyes. And I think as a person who used to work here at IAG, used to love to say a rising tide rises all boats, and I truly believe that's going to be a part of it. But I do believe that class is going to get very expensive for your common man to have a prayer of getting in the top 10 quickly. I think it's going to be sick until it happens, and then it's going to get kind of pricey. It's going to be awesome to watch, and if you have the means, I think you're going to love it. But I think the means, I think it's going to get expensive. I don't think you're going to see interesting things like weird GC builds and stuff be competitive within that class. You're going to have to start with a car with some really, really good bones. Maybe a built BRZ or something, because that chassis is really damn good. But the weird stuff is probably going to be hard to shove in there.
Now, is it easier to cram a Subaru build into GLTC, which is a 12-to-1 power to weight ratio, or GLGT, which is a 9-to-1 power to weight ratio?
I'm going to say GLTC, just because you could do it on a stock turbo. You don't need a crazy engine. You don't need a lot of insane stuff.
Do you think it would be competitive down there? Where would a Subaru be more competitive?
It depends. In the dry, yes. Raining, 100% the higher horsepower one. And this is me just spitballing this. I have to be real.
Okay.
But if I were to make a guess, I think a GLGT Subaru, an all-wheel drive GLTC Subaru is going to be that's going to be tough. I think a GLGT BRZ, I think there are builds for that make a lot of sense. They're probably going to be forced induction. And I think those could be incredible, just because that chassis is incredible no matter what you do with it. But from an all-wheel drive standpoint, there are advantages to all-wheel drive for sure. But I think that's going to be tough. I really do. That's a hard one. Adam Wood just popped in here, who drives a Subaru in GLTC, and he says he's going to have a GLGT tune for the GLTC car and see what it does for lap times. Adam would be the perfect person to watch for that. If Adam, I got to be real, I was wrong about GLTC. I did not think there would be a world where a GC would make any sense, and I was wrong. Adam's car, I think, with the development plan that it was on, I'm willing to believe this next coming season, he was already showing a ton of promise, and he was going to be ballistically fast at pit race. I think he would have been in the mix at pit race. I am so sad we didn't get to see where that was going, but he proved me completely wrong on that car being competitive. Even Tomo said the same thing. Was like this. He didn't think this car would have had a shot, and it absolutely does.
That's high praise coming from Tomo.
Yes, who has won a championship himself. So I don't know. What do you think, Graham? Have you looked at those rules at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty excited by it. You know, I've actually tuned a lot of GLTC cars that are actually GLGT cars. I've had to turn them down.
Yeah.
You know, Jeremy has the fall line Porsche Cayman. You know, it comes in at a power level that is, you know, without turning it down, is pretty suitable for GT. He also has that Honda Civic TC car. Same thing. It's basically, these cars were purpose built for that power to weight. So he could, you know, we could take off the detune and he could go have a good time with some higher speeds, perhaps, if he wants to. So it's certainly a better place for the Corvettes to go, and it lets the naturally lower power without detuning cars have a place to play that's more fair. So I think it's a good split. I think that it's a good thing overall. And I agree with everything you said about, I agree that money's going to find its way in, and, you know, that's going to be a thing. But I think it'll be fun to see the pace of those cars. The racing is going to get a little bit more intense with the pace that those cars can maintain. So
yeah, I agree.
I think it'd be interesting. I actually hit up Ben Harisco, you know, our partner on the GR Corolla stuff, and I think Ben's got some driving talent. He spent a lot of time behind the wheel of his Radical and other stuff, and I wish that I could convince him to turn his GR, you know, their shop GR Corolla into a GL GT car and go out there and campaign it. But he, you know, he kind of said the same thing Dewey did, where it won't be able to touch the cars that are going to be out there putting the money into it. You know,
money cars, yeah.
But I say, you know, my point was, well, who cares? You know, like, build it for you, build it for the shop, show it off, try to get that thing in the top 10. Maybe would be pretty sick, because he could do a sequential. We could do a slightly bigger turbo in it. You know, keep it detuned. You know, we'd be targeting, I think, about 360, 370 at the wheels with a sequential gearbox and some aero. Like, that would be a super fun car to see out there in that class, trying to run down some Corvettes. But again, I get it from his perspective. It's,
well,
you know,
I see it from his perspective too. I think Time Attack, from a effort versus return on effort, instead of ROI, return on investment, return on like full effort. I think Time Attack works better on showing off stuff like that than GLTC. No offense to anybody running GLTC. I think GLTC actually shows the driver off more than it shows the equipment off.
I think you're totally right about that. So I think the plan is to still build that thing up for, eventually it's going to have to go in track mod where it's going to fit. But, you know.
But even if you, like, let's be real, even if he goes into track mod, let's say he never podiums with it, but he's laying down some really wild times. You know, he can compare to like my car or something. You know what I mean? He can say, hey, look at, to give you a comparison of how fast something actually is, even though we're in different classes or whatever. It shows the car being, I think it actually showcases what he's trying to accomplish better. And from a shop standpoint or something like that, I think your return on effort is higher with Time Attack than it is with wheel to wheel.
Yeah,
and that's
I agree.
I really like GLTC, because the rule set was very simple and it really kept the cars fairly simple.
The challenge for Ben is Ben doesn't like Time Attack. Ben likes wheel to wheel, and he's done wheel to wheel. So that's why I was like, hey, here's a wheel to wheel class you could put this car in. But
Hey, honestly, do you really think it would be that bad if we already proven that a GC would do decent, that it'd be that bad in GLTC?
I don't know. Ben's funny, and we've had, you know, I have more faith in this chassis to be developable than he does to some degree. And sometimes he looks at it from a money perspective, and, you know, but I think the potential is there. I mean, I've put very little effort into our development car, and am not far off the pace of some of the top GLTC cars or whatever.
Well, I agree with that, but also I think one thing he's looking at too, you're out running Time Attacks. You're running, you know, let's say 5 hard laps out of a session. Okay.
Yep.
He's going to have to go an entire 15-minute session wide open. Okay. And
Yeah.
The replacement of that engine is ridiculous.
Yes,
He
it
built,
is.
hang on. He built his engine. He has pistons rods.
Okay.
Okay.
The replacement of that engine is ridiculous. Let's say he shits that engine. Let's say he pulls a Dewey. Okay.
Money shifts it.
Money shifts that bitch, stretches a bolt, the frickin'
Yeah.
cap comes off, he fires it through the top, shreds the frickin' heads.
$40,000.
Well, you missed the part where I said it's getting a sequential, so you can't money shift that. We're going to get to sequentials later in this conversation, but it's going to be built engine sequential, and rather than simply building it for 600 horsepower and trying to do time attack, he could build it for 370 horsepower and go wheel to wheel racing. That was my point.
Okay. I don't
He's
know.
already going to be. I mean, the build path for the build path for that car for track mod versus GLGT are very similar, right until the point where you choose the turbo. So my point was, go wheel to wheel that thing, and maybe if you can build it up there enough, if it's possible. Maybe I'm dead wrong about this, and the thing sucks. I have no idea for sure until we get more of these things built out and go on track. But if you could get that thing up into the top 10 and get some coverage, and this little Corolla is running down these Corvettes and these Dennis cars, that would be sick.
That would be sick.
If you also want to just make it 600 horsepower and go rip around and do some decent track mod times, that's cool too. I was just pointing that out to him.
But let's now just back up and let's talk about what is Instagram gonna like and what's gonna sell. So I'm seeing this from Ben's point of view. I'm actually going to argue for Ben here. And Instagram loves seeing big dyno numbers do crazy shit. Okay. And the typical buyer of that car isn't you and I. It's somebody 10 years younger than us, minimum. Okay. And that's who he's got to impress. And I got to be real, a power to weight limited class, I don't think is going to sell parts as good as a time attack car would.
Well, I don't know. Here's something we found with our customer base is that a lot of these guys are actually far more interested in setting these cars up and asking for track tunes and wanting to go do HPDE than they are trying to go drag racing or make horsepower.
I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying it catches the eye. That's it. It just shows up in your algorithm. I know because I see it all the time. I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying.
There's been a glut of horsepower in Instagram for a long time, though, to be fair. Eventually, the dam's going to break, and people are going to want, as a general rule, an experience rather than the next 1,000 horsepower car.
Look, man, I'm just telling you what you see on Instagram versus, and I agree with Graham, what you see on Instagram and getting into people's algorithms, and what people that maybe aren't going to purchase this or have anything to do with it are more willing to click like on and get it more into the algorithm. High horsepower stuff will do that better. Now,
and maybe we can, maybe the car could do both. I have no idea.
What people are calling for and actually wanting to do, that's different. The people who are spending the money, it's different. But the problem is it needs to get in front of them first. So it's this weird balance of having to make people who don't give two shits about this click the like button, and then the people you actually need to talk to, you need to somehow show we can do that too. In fact, it's actually what we'd rather be doing. It's hard.
Here we are talking about a GR Corolla, and I'm getting excited about it, even though I'm not really a fan of that car. I don't like the all-wheel drive system. It's not a Subaru brand. There's a couple of other reasons, but they're not important. I really wish that we could have that same level of hype and excitement for a VB, WRX, STI, in wheel-to-wheel or in time attack, but we don't really have it.
No, we'll talk about that right now, okay? There has been a pretty solid, I know of two right now, as we speak, people pulling out their K-Series for GLTC to put in FA24s.
Ooh, nice.
Yes, BRZ, I'm telling you right now, you're about to see a shift in that. You can get excited about theirs. I think the hype is in the BRZ right now. And I
agree.
think the aftermarket is actually missing it because they think it's not different enough from the last model when it's a completely different animal.
Yeah, I could see that. I think
So
that hype will build over time slowly once people
what
realize the FA24 is a
I'm
K24
worried
but
about is
modern.
it's too slow. The car goes off the market, and the engines in some of the stuff never go down in price, and
Uh,
that could hurt it a lot. So
does
the aftermarket's gonna
IAG
have to take care of all of that.
does IAG have a road race motor for the FA24 for the BRZ?
No, nobody does, and we're
Okay.
trying it. That's something I like. You're preaching to the choir, buddy.
We had this argument a year ago, which
Yeah.
is like this car is so good and many people know it, but many people don't. Why isn't there more support from the
Well, there's
aftermarket?
also the internet hype right now is if you take it on track, it's immediately going to die because you're either going to get silicone shit in your pickup or it's
Which
going to
was overblown and
immediately blow up.
yeah, overblown.
Oh,
Man,
completely.
marketing problem.
I agree, and again, if Subaru of America wants to have a conversation with me about how to help with all this, I'm more than happy to help. Give me a call. I'm easy to find. Dewey at iagperformance.com.
I got another
And-
question for you. So,
Okay.
Launch Control, the new episode, talked about the build on
Good.
Project Midnight, and it was a lot of what you predicted. Can you
Yeah.
tell me what you predicted and got right?
What I was they didn't go too much into the build, but they went into I got a lot more details about the car because of things they were talking about. Long story short, it's what I thought it was. It was a parts bin car. They basically took the rallycross car, put some bigger tires on it, kept it a little simpler, went to a smaller stroke engine so they could raise the red line, force fucked it with boost, and cut as much weight out of it as they could. So it's kind of like a no rules rallycross car. And
Tarmac spec.
tarmac spec, yes. And it like that's what it is. I got a little better look at the arrow in the front of the car, and it's what I thought it was.
Which is
It really doesn't have a front splitter. All of the downforce is coming from the top of the car.
okay. So
They're not
similar to Air Slayer.
It's very much, but again, that's what their experience is in. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it is really beating the air into submission. It's incredible how fast that car is for not using any of the underside of the car. At least it's not the underside of the car is not a serious part of the conversation with Aero. Um, it's it's an interesting car, to say the least. I bet you Scott loves driving it. I bet you the thing's an absolute riot. And they put a lot of basic adjustment in it. But it's not like it has active aero or anything like that.
Right.
It's sick, don't get me wrong. I still believe you can hear in the way they talk about that car. I have a very hard time believing we do not see it at a Gridlife event in some sort this season. I'm calling it right now.
Oh man, you say I'm gonna pull out a crisp dollar bill. I will
You already
sign my
owe me
name on it, deface it, and I will give it to you.
You already owe me one because
For what?
they did Time Attack already. They went to a
No.
global event.
No, I said it has to be Gridlife specifically, and they have to turn a
okay.
competitive lap.
I can smell that dial. I can smell the dollar.
Yeah, in the next 3 years, but it has to be competitive, not a parade lap, not a.
And that's what they went to go compete at that global event. Why they pick that event beyond me. I don't. It's on the other side of the fucking country too. The resource.
That's a lot of fuel.
Like
Yeah.
what I mean, I got to be real. Nobody can even tell me what that event was called. You know what I mean?
It was that they were trying to make it the Goodwood of America, and it wasn't. I guess it was run by Global. That's news to me.
Yeah. They were
Okay.
doing Time Attack there, and it was at Sonoma.
Yes.
So it was at a track I've always wanted to go to. And the event looked really cool, don't get me wrong, but I just don't I don't know who I got to get a hold of in marketing over there, but I want to see that car rip Gingerman, and it's going to be stupid. And it
Yep.
will be competitive, and people will lose their fucking minds.
Yeah. I'm a little surprised that they haven't done it yet, considering Gridlife is still really large and getting larger. They
Yes.
have more than bounced back from the COVID lull, I guess. They are bigger than they were pre-COVID.
By a fairly significant amount now, and
They
their
got Dead
for the
Mouse.
next season are nuts.
I regret not going to see Deadmau5 in Wisconsin at Road America.
You should. I don't know where your brain was at. I get it. I love you, man. You got a lot
Dude,
of
I was really burned out with work. It's been a great year. It's been a hard year.
That's when you're supposed to go watch Deadmau5.
Yeah, you're not wrong. One more question about SOA. Now, we still got to get the Arrow guy on the podcast if at all possible.
Yeah, I'm still working on that.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Parts bin car. Last comment on that. I'm glad that it's Scott Speed's car. Travis Pastrana is a huge guy. He's a marketing machine. I'm sure he's a sponsorship machine. He's had multiple cars built for him over the years, from the rally cars, then the rally cross cars, then the Air Slayer, and then the GL family Huckster. Now Scott gets a Scott car. So even though it's a parts bin car, I think that's cool.
No, I mean, I say parts bin car, but the reality of it is like a BRZ is a parts bin car too. It really is.
It's a great car.
That doesn't mean it's not a good car.
No, exactly.
Okay? It just, what they did was take a lot of what they already knew and a lot of probably already previously existing parts and shoved it into that. And it was like, build one of these, but you don't have these rules now. What would that look like?
Yep.
And that's what they came up with. There are some things that I think are a bit questionable. For some reason, they have their reasons for it. I think I understand why they did certain things, but yeah, it is what it is.
A question for Graham, and then you guys can go on and talk about sequentials or wherever you want.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Graham, you talked about the Audi RS. You, of course, are involved with GR Corollas. I think you're still, by a long shot, the number one tuner in GR Corollas. Then you've got Paragon Performance and the C8 Corvettes. And then you've got your Subarus. For the upcoming year, 2025, what are you most excited about?
Oh, man. So I'm really torn right now. Originally, the plan was to continue to develop the GR Corolla and continue to run it in Club TR. Waiting patiently to get a Motec ECU for it so that we have full engine management control and safeties. I don't know where the holdup is. I think they're trying to finish some of the CAN communication stuff for the US cars, but I'm pretty much first in line to get one the moment they're available. We're going to pull some weight out of it, potentially put a half cage in the rear to make it a bit safer and, get it to the maximum power it can safely within the limits. That was kind of the plan. But now that the rules have been tweaked to basically allow us to do sequential internals to our gearboxes for the Subarus, I really want to get Nasty back out there.
All right, we got to talk about that.
So now I'm torn. Now I'm actually much more inclined to kind of put the GR Corolla on the back burner for a little bit, since I'm already extremely busy with it and have accomplished what I need to accomplish there to get the tuning kicked off. And I'm more inclined to go out there and party with Dewey and basically co-campaign our cars together to continue to develop M-Tron tuning with sequential gearboxes.
Okay, pump the brakes. Brake. We got to talk about this. All right. Not last week, but the week before, it was like, I think it happened on a Wednesday, not like last week, but the week before. Maybe it was last week. Either way, long story short, Gridlife changed some rules for street
clarify the rules.
Well,
That's
yeah,
right.
I would say they did clarify the rules because I am still arguing that it was legal. Long story short, they basically added some wording that isn't 100% solidified yet, but we're pretty sure it's going to stay. That basically states that you can now put sequential guts inside of an OEM case for your transmission. That is basically how all Subarus do, all manufacturers do Subaru sequential transmissions. That basically opened up sequential transmissions for us in Street Modified, which drastically changed the playing field. We no longer have to stick with a basic H pattern. We did get it opened up to do a dog box, but we were all really questioning if that made any sense or not. But this actually makes sense. So now anybody who was doing time attack with a Subaru, an Evo, or an Audi, which are the three right off the top of my head that I know exist. But I think you can also do this with T56s, and those, T56 based transmissions. So I think even Corvettes have options like this. There's a lot of stuff like that. So this opens up all sorts of fun stuff. Everybody's brain is churning right now about what they're trying to do. I know we're looking at a few different brands and a few different options. We're not going to go into which brands and which options quite yet, but I know we're looking at it. I actually talked to Mike Omick today, Graham. He hit me up like right after you and I had a conversation.
Yep.
So Mike is looking at it. You're looking at it. I know of a couple other cars who are looking at it. I have a feeling Mr. Josh Aldridge would have been looking at it if he didn't hack the whole front of his car off now. But now he's definitely going to be looking at it because he's legal no matter which way he goes. And this is exciting. I'm excited for probably a different reason than you are as much. The big thing I'm excited about is it opens up my left foot to do braking now. And then I really don't, after we get moving, I shouldn't have to mess with the clutch as long as I'm going at full tilt boogie.
I like the sound of that, but that requires auto blip downshift. And that's Graham saying, I told you so.
Yeah, well, we knew it's a sequential. It's different.
Okay.
It does still, yeah. So to downshift a sequential, it does still lean on drive-by-wire blips.
Yes.
So you're still braking. So you're on the brake, and your left foot is, your right foot is on the brake, or it can be your left foot. You could be left foot braking. Anyway, your foot on the brake, 100%. No need to touch the clutch. You push the stick forward. The load cell detects that. And if you're within a range that allows it to downshift, it will blip the engine to let the downshift happen.
Yep.
Okay, Dylan from IAG says he has a question. Just ask the question. But how excited are you, Graham, about a sequential and nasty?
Oh, very. It'd be very exciting. So I do want to touch on something, and maybe Johnny Trans in here. I don't know who Johnny Trans is in real life, but it sounds like he has some experience with transmissions and building them. But I said earlier, and maybe I kind of generalized when I said you can't money shift a sequential gearbox.
Yes.
And he said, yes, you can. And I want to go back and kind of talk on that and clarify that a little bit, maybe get some input from him on maybe his experience there. But it's not impossible. It's just a lot more difficult because the shifting only goes in one direction. You can't go from 4 to 2 unless you were to pump it twice. And also, as I just mentioned, with proper ECU control, when you shift a sequential stick, you actually don't put a ton of pressure on it. You just put enough pressure to overcome the load cell, and then if you're within the parameters of the ECU tune that allow it to shift, it will blip. And it's not going to want to disengage the gear under full decel or under full acceleration unless there's a cut to the engine or a blip to the engine. So it's not going to want to go in the next gear unless the ECU tells it to blip or cut. So let's talk about it from a perspective of going full throttle. Okay, let's say you're in third gear, and the stick is set up to pull to go up. You're full throttle in third gear, and you accidentally push forward instead of pulling back. You're not going to go down a gear. It is not going to, unless you just absolutely hit that stick with a ton of effort, it's not going to go back into second. It's just not going to do anything because the ECU is not going to allow it to, because you're pushing the wrong way. And then you're like, oops. So you pull the other way, and that is the correct way. And then boom, it's going to cut the engine. It's going to push for the next gear, which is fourth. So again, it's not impossible. It's just much more difficult to do with proper ECU control. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Or do you guys have questions around, like, maybe warranty? If I've confused you, maybe you can ask some questions and I can explain better.
Actually, I've got my own questions. There's some questions that I've had a little while. It's more with engine tuning with a sequential.
Yes.
So this gear change is going to happen really fast, up and down. I mean, is there any like I'm interested to know if there's any interesting approaches you have to take with sequentials due to like that ludicrously fast RPM change. I can imagine that OEM ECUs are going to lose their effing minds if you start playing with that, but a good standalone should be able to work with that. But do you think that's going to cause any maybe accelerated wear on the engine that from a tuning perspective that you might be able to see?
No, I mean, that's the crazy thing is we've had this conversation, and and I'm not, we won't get into, we won't make it political here, but like when we've done flat foot shifting on your car to deal with turbo lag, and some people have said, well, that's hurting the engine when you do that. But then you have to realize that like an Audi RS3 or a Porsche 911 Turbo with a PDK, how do you think they're doing flat shifts?
Right.
What do you think is happening? They're cutting some fuel, they're cutting the ignition, and then they're resuming it, but they're leaving the boost at full boost. We're doing exactly the same thing on your car. Why is it magically hurting a Subaru engine, but a Porsche engine's fine? Answer me that.
I think back to how you set up Boogeyman. This was, I guess, before COVID, where we were at Road America, and you set up the ECU to load shed so that he would wear the synchros less on the stock STI transmission, turning a stock transmission sure sounded like a sequential, but it wasn't. That was actually making it less load.
We got accused of it being a sequential because it would pop like hell. And I think Graham's even learned a bit about how the approach for flat foot shifting and stuff since then too.
The trick is to correctly cut the torque away using the right strategies in the engine and correctly reintroducing it. So there's percentage cuts, not just a full cut. There's ignition reduction, ignition reintroduction. So you do it all correctly, and you're basically shifting. You're treating the engine exactly the way that the engineers at Porsche do when they shift their engine on a PDK.
Yep,
that's what we're trying to do here.
I thought sequentials were cool, but I thought they were a lot cooler once I realized you had to build that load shedding to get everything to work right. So,
correct. You're basically like what you're doing is you're holding on the stick, and it doesn't want to let go because the force, the acceleration of the engine is pulling the gears together. It doesn't want to let go. But as you pull on the stick, it's like you're preloading it, and then you trigger the load cell. You have a load threshold, and that does a quick cut on the engine, and all of a sudden it wants nothing more than to go into the next gear. It completely lets go. The dogs engage the next gear, and bam, you're into the next one.
Well,
and
it's even like a stock trans where if I'm sure you guys have all done this where you've driven a little ways and you're like, look, I ain't even going to use the clutch. And as long as you put just a little bit of pressure, you let off the gas and you put a little bit of pressure, it'll just glide into the next gear. Yeah, it's kind of the same concept, except it's happening significantly faster.
Yeah. Now it would be cool. So for this year, we get to have a sequential, but we have to shift it with a lever. The track mod guys, they get to use paddles this year. And now the paddles, I will argue that with a proper tuning strategy, you can't money shift with paddles because that's just a button input. And then the ECU is making the decision, and you're using an air tank and an air shifter like Johnny Trans is talking about here to do the actual shifting. That's even cleaner, but we don't get to do that. So we can't use air shifting. We have to manually move the lever, which means the driver does have to be careful when they're pushing, when they're pulling, and then the tuning strategy has to work correctly. But as long as that's all done, it's still pretty darn consistent.
Sequentials, if in an OEM case.
Yes.
Now, we've got a comment in here from, I'm hoping that's Mike at Cosmic. RCM does a twin belt timing belt system to help with the belt slap from those hard cuts and fast RPM changes on a sequential. From my understanding, they learned that from all the rally they did over there. So comments on that.
They also they've had some pretty rowdy time attack cars in their day too, and RCM's done some really, really insane builds. Plus they've also played around. They've got the Pro Drive guys, they're boys with those dudes over there. They learned a lot about what you can get away with with these engines for years. I'm gonna say this.
Doesn't the new timing belt system that we have help solve this? Isn't that kind of one of its purposes?
It helps, okay? But here's what I'm going to say, and I can't say this too I have a feeling we're going to go to sequentials and we're going to learn things, and maybe some stuff that we had on the back burner may get pushed up a little bit. Let's just leave it like that.
I like the sound of that.
Okay, I can't really say too much past that, but there were conversations that have been had, the landscape of certain things change. So, yeah.
That sounds like a very good step in the right direction towards making Subaru great again.
I mean, yeah. Personally, I think Subaru's pretty great right now. Honestly, like the more I think about it, the more I think we're kind of in a great spot. Like, I'm not saying that you can't just run into the dealership and get whatever, but GD chassis aren't so old they're falling apart. Like, they are, but you can still find clean ones. Okay. GRs are plentiful. You can find a clean GR for a very reasonable price now. VAs are still very clean out there. So if you want a good chassis to go build something sweet with, you have options on the market. It's not some, crazy thing. Finding GCs is getting harder, but they're also importing fairly clean GCs for a reasonable price these days ish, already turbo setup. If you wanted to go to the track with a GC, or if you wanted to even have like kind of a dual duty, EJ powered Subaru, you're living in kind of a heyday right now. Don't get me wrong, some stuff's starting to creep up in price, but we know how to do things so much better now too. You can get a plethora of different standalone options. There's a ton of great tuners out there. There's a lot of people you can talk to that'll point you in the right direction to do what you need to do that didn't even exist 5 years ago. I'm just going to flat out say it. I mean, it just really didn't exist. Like, we're living in a good spot right now. And then you also have a pile of dirt cheap, still running first gen BRZ FRSs out there that are a great way to get to the track. And FA24 swaps are getting easier by the second. And then the second gen BRZ, GR86, are phenomenal straight off the lot. And I just, dude, I think we're kind of living in Concord right now and we don't realize it.
I could see that, and I hope it's the case. But man, I just wish they still sold an STI.
I know, we all do. I wish stuff was still developing, but we have to be appreciative of what all exists already to a certain degree. I mean, we have it so much better than so many other platforms.
That's true.
We like to complain, but I mean, I'm telling you, we're in a really damn good spot. Yeah,
I got another question for you. This is, I think, mostly for Dewey, but as well for Graham. So I saw we all saw Safety Mike at PRI recently, and he mentioned that Gingerman is getting repaved soon, probably 2026, I believe. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm always down. I love the fact that they can afford to repave it and get that done. I'm interested to see what they do with it. Repaving can go either way. It can either be stupid grippy or not. There was a question back there that I think we can hit right now on who's going to go sub 130 and who isn't. Before the repave, I think he named the
three people: Alan Patton, Kyle McHugh, or Dewey. So that's 2 Supras and a really, really angry GC. Who's going to go sub 130 at Gingerman first?
Especially if we get the sequential in there and running correctly by then. Okay, let's say I show up with a full kill boogie on a sequential. I think Alan and I have an equal, before the repave, I think Alan and I have very equal chances of going sub 130 with Kyle right on our ass. Okay, now that's not saying that Kyle couldn't pull it off before us. I'm just, if you were to like the odds, I would say him and I are really damn close. And reason being, all-wheel drive is going to help me. Alan, I'm just going to admit, is a better driver, and that car is prepped really well. And then I think Kyle has a lot of horsepower, and it's very hard to control through 2 wheels. Now after the repave, I think I get moved to third. That's how much a repave could change it. And I believe the records are going to drop immediately if the pavement is grippy. If it's not, then it's gonna totally swing my direction. The crappier the surface is, the better the chance we have. That's really what it is. So
Same on pavement, same on tarmac or dirt, same on snow. It's kind of the universal story of Subaru, isn't it?
yeah, the shittier. Well, that's why for the longest time I was hellbent on the proper car for this was a Subaru for this class, because we were limited on tire, but 200 treadwear tires are basically turned into Hoosiers. So, well, Hoosiers even making a 200 treadwear tire, but have basically turned into our comps. You take a modern 200 treadwear tire and you were to take it back to like 2005. Oh my God, like they'd think you were an alien. How ridiculous they are now.
Comment in the chat from Adam D. Now I want to bring a nuclear density gauge to Gingerman. That's for testing the density of soils and pavement. That's his day job. This is kind of the story of Dewey and Boogeyman and the whole community, which is you got a bunch of nerds all around each other trying to help each other go faster. Bunch of nerds, man.
I'm interested to see what that pavement's going to look like. But I got to be real. There's spots in Gingerman that could use it. Gingerman's probably needed a repave for a little while. Me personally, I don't mind a rougher track. Like I didn't mind Mid Ohio, but there's a lot of people who are not happy with the condition of Mid Ohio. It might elevate Gingerman a little bit. I think it's going to make it a lot prettier. I'm interested to see what happens with it. We'll see, because I bet you the curbing's going to get redone and a lot of stuff's going to get redone. So there's some spots where curbing really needs to be rethought on Gingerman. There's some car eating shit that goes on at Gingerman if you don't know what you're doing. So
yeah, it's a great track though. It's not just a track out in the woods. It's a nice track.
It is. I got to be real. I love Gingerman. It's right there. It's always in my top 3 of favorite tracks of all time. It's a very organic track, which I really like, but I make no
bones about it.
Yeah, it is a farm track. Okay. It's a middle of the field farm track. It is this. If you are used to going to, like a Watkins Glen or a Summit Point even, or something like that, these are nicer tracks. And you go to Gingerman's in the middle of the field. The pavement is so. The facilities, this track was never designed to hold 40,000 people at a Gridlife event.
But let's just say and it's great. Let's just say the dentists are in for a surprise.
Oh, that's a really good point. Like, I think if you're gonna see upsets of the less money cars, like really putting up a fight. The dentists, that's a really great way of putting it. The dentists who end up coming there, they're going to be in for a big surprise. They are not prepared for Gingerman. Gingerman is its own animal. It is. And I'm still convinced Gingerman's one of those tracks you can drive, a million times and you will never get it right. There's no such thing as a perfect lap at Gingerman. It doesn't exist.
I'll tell you what, I like farm tracks better than big tracks because I drive a BRZ. And I need a farm-sized track.
It isn't even so much it's a farm-sized track. It's kind of how it's very organic. It's literally the polar opposite of Autobahn. Autobahn feels completely synthetic. It does not feel natural in any way of the way the corners are set up. There's a lot of like 90s and stuff. It's very, I don't know. It feels very fake. Gingerman feels like it's like following. It feels like an old road that somebody paved into a racetrack. Like,
yeah,
and that's what I love about it.
That was the design.
That's how it was designed on purpose.
Yes.
Follow the curves of the natural terrain, make it feel like a country road, and it does both of those.
That, and the designer had a lot of things in his mind he wanted to have on the track to feel like, some of his favorite corners from other tracks. And that's why Gingerman does some of the things Gingerman does. And you can feel it in certain ways. And it's awesome. The way certain things drop, the way camber is in certain corners, the way some corners feel like a 2-parter when they're actually a 1-parter track corner. There's things like that transitions and stuff. Gingerman's an odd duck. And that's why it's always going to be up there, because there's nothing else out there quite like Gingerman.
Designed by Alan Wilson, who also designed Audubon Country Club.
Yes.
Pittsburgh International Race Complex, PPIR.
No,
Am I
PPIR. You're thinking of Pit Race.
Oh,
PPIR
this is it. Commonly known as Pit Race.
Yeah, Pikes Peak International Raceway.
Oh, that's right. Okay, Pit Race. My bad.
Yes. So either way, yeah, which Pit Race again feels super organic and a lot of fun. I think he maybe just mailed it in on Autobahn. No offense. I hate Autobahn. I think the track's stupid. I'm fast there and I don't like it. Like I'm not having a good time driving that track. I'm gonna say it. Like I think it's so ungodly, blown out of proportion. The people who are like, man, Autobahn's one of my favorite tracks. I just can't figure out how. Like, what are you getting? What enjoyment do you get out of this? So yeah,
Graham, you were going to say something.
Was I? I don't know.
Okay. Well, we've been at this for an hour and a half. So, any last thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think we're cutting along here pretty good. I don't know. Anybody got anything else they want to chat about? Graham, got something?
Nothing off the top of my head. No.
All right. Yeah, I think we're gonna call it at that then, unless anybody in the chat's got a last second thing. I think that's about it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to hit us up. Shoot me an email, Dewey at iagperformance.com. If you can, do a solid, hit the like button and maybe share this up a little bit. I want comments. If you have any questions that maybe we didn't get to for whatever reason, or you wanted to ask them in the comments. If you have any comments on some of the stuff that we said today, feel free to leave it in the comments. Throw me some comments on Spotify. It really helps us out. So. Dutch, one last question. Gonna win Street Mod title next year. I hope so, man. I'm never in it for second place. Okay. Alan is no joke. Just real talk. Alan is no joke. And it isn't like he's sitting on his hands. He's not just waiting for us to show up. So it's gonna be rough, but we got thrown a massive bone. So we have a prayer now. So all right, guys. It's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun, and we will catch you next time.